All right, let me just get this to full screen here. How's that? Is that full screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Great. So I'm just going to talk through this, you guys, and I can't, as always, the usual Zoom not enough screens thing. I can't see you all, so feel free to jump in at any point and just speak out. This is a working session, not a don't stand on formality. If there's something that's not clear, just tell me. All right.
Okay.
So how to share your space for fun and profit 101. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of examples. So first of all, we're going to look at the one that I spent 7 years on. So Trinity St. Paul's in Toronto, which I've mentioned to you guys before. So Trinity St. Paul's is 44,000 square feet with 780 seat sanctuary, 9 other large spaces, and 14 offices. So I'm just giving you guys a sense of scale. We'll go through different scales and different ways that people have done this so that you can sort of look at your own scale and adjust in your head and think a little bit about the things you might need to make this work for you. So these two congregations amalgamated, and then they began sharing their space first with Tafel Music Baroque Orchestra, who was their and still is their principal tenant. I'm a big fan of the principal tenant model, whether that's a singular one or 3 or 4. So in fact, Trinity St. Paul's is built around Trinity, Tafel Music, Viva Youth Singers, Toronto Consort, and Annex Montessori. So it's actually 5 core users. And then a combination of offices and casual use space. And if you have that opportunity, the good thing about that is offices are low tech and they just keep rolling. So you make less money, but you also don't have to clean them. You don't have to staff them. They just keep doing what they're doing. Office spaces also tend to provide for a ground base of people who care about the space, who are there, who have a vested interest in it being run well and letting you know if things aren't going well. So that's Trinity St. Paul's. So you guys have talked about, how do you become what you want to be? So Trinity did this for a long time. So first of all, understand that they were the first one to do this. So this took them far longer than it should have. So this is year 23 when they hit these $3 million of renovations with Tafel Music. So prior to that, they'd been sort of jockeying along, doing little bits of things here and there, small accessibility adjustments, small adjustments in paint and stuff. And then the opportunity came for a significant amount of funding. And because, like what you guys are doing now, they had laid the groundwork with their partner, Tafel Music, when the government came and said, we're looking for shovel-ready projects in the next 14 months that we can bring matching funds to. It was fairly easy for Tafel Music and Trinity St. Paul's to jump in. And they actually did so with a singular gift to start the fundraising off from the Hal Jackman Foundation, who donated $1 million, which the government then matched. So unusually, you can see there on the right-hand side that Trinity St. Paul's actually has a donor wall. Not many churches go this far, but if you look at it, you'll notice that the donor wall is all in white. All the names are in white. So it lacks that sort of arrogance and intensity that you can sometimes get of donor walls of look at me, look at me. It kind of fades in as part of the architecture. And while you can't read it, the statement over the top about Trinity St. Paul's and Tafel Music is about growing in community and developing a place for everyone together and about shared vision and values in relation to that donor wall. So here's some of the people who are resident at Trinity St. Paul's. Other models that we can look at in space sharing. In Quebec City, there's this wonderful model where 2 quite large churches sit side by side. And they use their outside spaces for an artisan alleyway, but it's a permanent artisan alleyway. And so they installed the necessary power for all of these booths to operate there all of the time. And the local artisans have these booths as their standard shop. So they're open year round. Sometimes I gather they close if it's like super, super cold, but basically they're open year round. And what this does is it attracts wonderful energy in between those 2 churches, and it attracts tourists towards that church as well as locals to do all kinds of things. Another model that's somewhat similar to this is I know a number of churches, including Guelph Harcourt, who use their parking lot spaces as things for the police to do major trainings or for people to do major outdoor things that involve kind of like circus tent models. So another thing to think about is your outdoor space and the usage of that. Another good usage for you guys in your outdoor space, a combination of your outdoor and your indoor space is kind of ideally suited for film location. Not necessarily because they'll want to film at your location, but because when you set up to film at a location, you need a holding spot for all the people who aren't filming. So for instance, if you're filming outdoors, you need a place to keep everybody indoors and to feed them and to provide bathrooms and costume spaces and all that. And then they often need a large parking lot to park all of the buses that take them back and forth from filming locations and or the catering vans and things. So don't forget when thinking about sharing your space to think about your outdoor spaces as well. So first things first, which is awesome. You guys got there on your own. This is why you called me. Make sure you're all on side. Take the time to make an agreement with your congregation about what you want to create. So things to think about are what times and spaces the congregation wants to reserve for its exclusive use. Make that list, then challenge that list, then challenge it again, then keep track for the next 2 months whether people show up when they say they're going to, and 3 strikes and they're out. Because congregations have a strong tendency to hold spaces for the assumption that they're going to do something. So when they tell you they're going to do something, believe them at first and believe that their intent is good, but then insist that people prove that they're going to use it, that you hold them accountable, that if they're not using spaces, it reverts to the general usage pattern. How will the congregation book additional times outside of that time? So no offhanded bookings, no talking to the poor minister during service about something that you want to do for a card party, no mentioning it to a board member. There's a singular system, and that singular system applies to everyone, whatever that system is, and that it has to be attached to a church circle, an activity that someone can say that is been agreed to by the church. If it's not, cool, but then it's a rental, right? How much freedom does your booking team have to accept bookings? So you have to decide together. The more freedom you give them, the more successful this will be. So I suggest that you set your standards up front of what kind of bookings you want to accept, and then let your staff or whoever you have starting out doing it, volunteers, whatever, go to town and make it happen. This is kind of the meat of a lot of it. So questions on that before I continue on?
I guess I just have a comment. We're almost there. So
Almost there in terms of this usage pattern and setting all this
yeah,
up? Good.
yeah, it's me and one other person that manage it. We've just put a system in, so the front end that I have to get up on the website.
Great.
And we actually don't have a lot of congregational time booked. There's only a few of them, and I'm watching those to make sure they're actually used. But
great. Yeah, you guys have ever been ahead of the curve, so I'm not particularly surprised.
actually, if we could use 2 gyms right now and keep them both busy.
That's awesome.
Well, shit, yeah.
So then scan of environment, what kind of renters does your church want? Sounds like you're already well ahead on this too, but things to consider: when are you willing to be open? What's the sound transfer like in your building? So what kind of events can happen to adjacent to each other? Will you accept liquor with the provision of special occasion permits or not? And how will your street involved and vulnerable people fit into this vision? So basically, when you choose partners who you can happily engage with, you create a happy building where people want to be, right? So it behooves you to spend a little time up front thinking about who you want. Same thing on your spaces. How do your available spaces suit the desired renters? Do you need to do any renovations? Do you need to clean things up? What features do you want to accent? What do you want to draw people's attention to, and how will you do that? How will you help people discover your spaces? So we'll get to that in the marketing part in a minute. The people, what staffing will be required to meet the needs of your new renters other than Harold? Eventually when we get good at this, you'll want to think about how you meet the staffing needs. So daycare and kitchen usage are more impactful on a building. They require higher levels of custodial as well as security. When your residence groups are successful and bring in large numbers of people, your operations and materials costs will increase. So you got to think about that. And when you have a higher level of people, how will you tend to their safety? Do you need extra staff? Do you need CCTV? Do you want to do controlled entry? What are all the things that you're going to need to do that? But we can talk about, this is often a a spectrum approach. So it's very typical to start out with volunteers managing things and then go to what we call a hosting model. So hosts are very typically seniors or 20-somethings who live in your neighborhood who only want to do a little bit of work, either because they have kids or are at school or don't want to be working all the time, but would like to be out in the world. And so we tend to suggest to churches that they hire 5 or 6 of those people as your hosts so that when you have major events or a particularly busy night, you can have them come in, they open the space, they tell people where to find all the things, they do a little bit of light cleaning and they close it up. And that tends to be your in-between model as you move from all volunteer towards what in the long run will probably have to be a staffed model if you're successful. Any questions on any of that? This is a fee schedule. I don't suggest you use this one. This is Trinity St. Paul's. It's hourly. I don't show it to you because I think you should book hourly. Trinity St. Paul's, I inherited this way and it was just impossible to break because of the 400 users who'd been using it hourly for forever. I suggest you do 4-hour, 8-hour, or even weekend, depending upon what the rooms are. The reason I show this to you is to give you the opportunity to see the mission to money match as it's expressed in fee schedules. So the way you can see how the rate 1, 2, 3, and 4 plays out and how you decide for yourself what the mission is that you most want to reach. So you can see by the fact that arts rehearsals are in rate 4 that for Trinity St. Paul's, the arts were actually more important than their peace and social justice work, which they put at a rate 3, and then the neighborhood groups were a rate 2, while special events are rate 1. The reason special events are rate 1 is because everybody brings their slush in and leaves their wine glasses around, and it's just messy. So this is one model. We have lots of models, but it's something to think about is the ways in which you tier your rates that you'd want to charge people to the things that you want to see happen in your building. The other part of this that you're not seeing in here is the timing of that. So the way Trinity's timing works, and pretty much everyone I've built since, is that special events go in up to 18 months in advance. The reason is they bring in the most money and they're the most impactful and they tend to knock other people out. And then after all of the special events are in, those who are paying rates 2, 3, and 4 go in 6-month chunks, 2 months before that 6 months begin. So to make that slightly clearer, in July, they would be taking bookings for September to December. And in November, they would be taking bookings for January to June for the people who want the lower rates. So basically, if you want an absolute guarantee that you'll get your space, you pay the rate 1. If you don't need that guarantee, you pay the rate 2, 3, or 4. And it generally works out in the sense that if a group comes, say, that's doing dancing 10 sessions, is what it tends to happen after you account for stat holidays and such, usually they would end up getting 9 out of their 10 confirmed up front. And then they're just saying to their students, okay, here's the 9 dates we have in that time frame. So it's not that anybody's getting bumped. They know in advance they don't have a certain date because someone is willing to put a lot of money on the table. So mission to money match.
So,
Questions about that?
well, just comments.
Yeah, hit me.
So we have one rate and 2 of our largest renters they have a slightly lower rate. But actually the majority of our money comes from renters who come in around now and book from September to June.
Yep.
And by the time they're finished, quite frankly, there's not a lot of space left. In fact, they're looking for more, all of them. So that's just my comments.
Okay. And you maybe
it almost looks like to have a rate 1, I'd have to increase the rates. So.
Yes, which you probably should do, but we'll look at your rates as part of the things. We'll also look at anybody who isn't paying at all and why. And then I also, Harold, I tend to believe you because you're a very business-like guy. But many a time a congregation has told me they have no space in their building. And then when I ask them to give me their full schedule for a month, I find out they have tons of space. They just feel busy. You're probably right. You probably don't have, but let's look at it, right?
Yep.
Now you built it. How you share it? So use your own real estate. The front of your building is an opportunity to tell people what's happening inside and to indicate excitement and energy and that this is a place that people want to be. And that helps you to overcome the sort of fear that people have of entering faith buildings, and they learn that the faith building is for everyone and that all kinds of things are happening there. Sorry, I'm just seeing someone's in the chat there. Marketing equals enter sign guy. Yes, no kidding. And this, of course, is in downtown Toronto. So this is at Bloor and Spadina. So, you know, you're seeing thousands of people walking by every day. We're half a block from the Spadina subway. So you have to take all these things in their own context for your own layout, right? Oh, yay. My teenager brought me tea. Oh, and cake. Yay. I'm loved. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Work with your congregation to establish an authentic voice that encompasses all of the things that you do, but also your openness to those who use your spaces. Post often, include pictures, share what your partners are doing. It's a part of what makes you great, right? Link to other people's websites, at them, tag them. When you do that, they're forced to interact with you. It's just social media politeness. They don't have a choice but to like you back. So it's a good way to increase your impact. In your early days, if you're trying to incentivize a new usage pattern, you might want to decide to trade discounted space for good reviews. Now, of course, you're not telling people they have to give you good reviews. You're saying, you know, when someone has used the space, you'd say, I'd be willing to give you a discount if you would consider writing a review, right? You're not telling them that they have to write you a good review. All right. Fill your feeds with the fun that you're having and the difference that you're making. So my rule at all of my venues is 50 to 60% someone else, 40% us. And the 40% us ideally will also still be someone else, right? So it will be connected to a social justice issue or something that's happening in the world. Or so try and think about ways that you can tell your story in pictures, like on the right-hand side, and in posts for events, because events are still a powerful way to convey to people what's happening. And then just interesting pictures that you wouldn't think you'd see. So for instance, the little free library there on the left-hand side. I didn't know that I had a completely Marxist construction guy working at my place. I asked him to make me a little free library, and he made me one that says, "It is difficult to oppress an educated nation." I thought, okay, fine. I'm not going to argue that. Caught me a little off guard, but there you go. That's what you get when you don't frame your request. Run a campaign. So if someone gets a great review in your space for something that they did, a concert or a book reading or whatever, use that great review to tell your story, right? So Musical Toronto, when Trinity St. Paul's first opened, gave Tafla Music a fantastic review and a review of the hall that Tafla Music was performing in. And so we ran a whole series of ads on Musical Toronto to draw attention to it as a venue that other classical music groups would want to book. And they still do that. So whenever there's a great review, they pick up the review line and say, something like, this kind of quality only comes from a quality recital hall, blah, 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 which in fact is true. Classical music is only as good as the hall that it's performed in. So. Yep. So we got named one of the top 5 classical music venues in Toronto. So we ran an ad in the whole note listing just that the following week as well. Be available, answer the phone or email within 24 hours, preferably less, every day of the week, and answer it in a way that's a real answer, not I'll send it to a committee who will get back to you answer. If it's something really dodgy, then send it to a committee. But in 95% of the cases, you should be able to make a decision in that moment. And then here's about how to set your rental rates. There's lots of ways to think about this, so you can figure out how much it costs to run your building and how much extra it costs when you run events. But then once you've done that, you need to set this aside for a little while, because when you're building a rental business, you're going to have to ignore that a bit. But it sounds like you guys are past that. So you might want to think about that. How much is it costing you to rent out your building versus how much you're bringing in? Think about your mission. Do you want to have different rates for different activities? Do a market scan, check out who else in your region is renting their spaces out and how much they're renting them out for. But in doing that, take account like for like. What's their accessibility? What's their parking? What's the quality of their finishes? Are they on a bus line? You know, all of the different things that might affect how much someone is renting for. And then start testing it, set your rates and see what people say. And then start figuring out what that means. All right, that's the short version of how to share your building for fun and profit. Okay, I have to get out of this without this meeting is being recorded. Oh, okay, got it. I didn't say that. There we go. All right. Questions, thoughts, ideas on that before we go on to talking about your specific questions of today?
The town of Oakville had a very similar setup as far as rental clients. They've since steered away from it. But thinking of the Oakville Center, where, you know, if you were a band, you were like, you wanted to rent the space, and, you know, you were an Abbott tribute band and you were doing some big tour or whatever, and you wanted to rent the space, X number of dollars. That's where you're going to go there. And then if it was more of a local group, they get more. If it was a local nonprofit, like the theater groups, it would cost less. There was anyhow, they've done away with all that, which is also a big reason why we don't have a lot of theater groups able to operate anymore, because the cost got way too much for them. But it's not, I understand where you're coming from with different rates for different groups, for sure.
It also depends on whether they are charging, right? So the difference between a class that someone is charging for versus an AA group where you theoretically they're charging, but it's whatever you have in your pocket, you know, versus a meeting that's for a social justice thing in order to, you know, draw attention to something. You know, you just have to think about what they're bringing in as well, which is also why arts rehearsals tend to be way less than arts shows, because a show has a ticket price, right?
Yeah, I think about for the group on here, minus Kendra, like I think about what Harold brought to us around the camp that was looking to rent the space and was clearly looking for a very discounted rate, but was very much a for-profit camp, summer camp. They were very clearly, in saying this, I have no idea how that ended up. I have no idea where that landed, but something just didn't feel quite right about that to me. Like they were clearly, based on what they were charging, they were going to be making some money. So it was just kind of like, well, as part of that, you should be paying us a fair rate for the space. So, I mean, conceptually, the idea of, I guess deciding and aligning the use of our space with our mission, so that the right groups are using the limited space that we have. And this is all pie in the sky, longer term stuff. I understand that right now we've got lots of groups who are in the space, and right now we're kind of just like, let's fill the space however we possibly can. But if we have more people willing to use this or wanting to use the space than we have space for them to use, then how do we prioritize the people that we let use the space to maximize both the impact that it's going to have on meeting our vision, as well as, in partnership with the dollars that it's going to bring in. And so I don't know that we're quite at that point yet. I think we're only now at a point, as Harold said, where we've kind of got, more requests to use the space than we've had in a long time. And you know, we've never really, or not to my knowledge, we've not had the issue of saying like, well, we'd rather have this renter than that renter, right? Like we've
Yeah.
never actually, we haven't had to make that decision to my knowledge, and perhaps that existed long ago, but it's an interesting spot, I guess, you know, because I didn't necessarily see us in that position.
That's great. That's exciting. The other way you can think of it too, Jeff, is it doesn't have to even be mission based. It can also just be time based, right? 3:30 p.m.
Sure.
to 8:30 p.m.
Yep.
should cost more than anything else because everybody wants to do everything from 3:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. If you
That's a
want to
great
come
point.
in and practice the piano at 10:30 in the morning, give her.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one cares. Sure. As long as the
Yeah.
building's open.
Well,
you know?
supply and demand, right? It's like supply and demand. That's what it is. Everybody
Yep.
wants the space between this time and this time, therefore it costs more. The 407 costs more during rush hour. You know,
Yep.
it's that kind of concept.
Exactly.
You talked about the fact that, you know, we say we have no space really left to rent out, but that sometimes you come in and have a look and find there is space that we
Yeah.
haven't thought about or something like that. As part of our contract with you, will you do that?
Yeah. So what you do is, poor Harold's already going like, oh no, this is coming back to me. I can see it now. It totally is, Harold. Basically what you do is Natasha gives you this fancy spreadsheet that she designed that is a demand schedule, and you enter in what you have in all the times, and then she gives you back a graph that tells you what you're using the most and what you're using the least. I don't honestly know how she does it. It's fancier
The
than me.
software that Harold bought shows us
Mhm.
a graph of what's being used when and all of that.
It's the hours of 4:30 to 11.
Totally. And so
And
sometimes,
during the week, 4:30 to 11, the building right now is almost packed. And
Awesome.
we're not forcing guides and scouts out of the building because they pay almost nothing, but like they're paying like $5 an hour.
yeah,
And the only one that's free is AA when they're
Yes.
in there on their
What
their
about
Monday
Special,
night.
Special Olympics? What did they pay?
No, they're paying about $5 an hour as well,
Yeah.
but maybe
Yeah.
not. They're paying $1,500 a year for one group once a week, whereas
I know.
the
I know.
scouts are paying $1,500 a year for 4 groups once a week.
Right,
So
yeah. So have I shared with you guys the financial statements for the Girl Guides and the Boy Scouts? Because this is a bit of a
No.
shtick of mine. Yeah, I'll send them to you. Stop giving it to them for free. They have
Well, this-
$23 million a year. You don't need to worry about them. Their top paid people make 300,000 and more a year, and there are 15 of those in each of those organizations. You don't need to be worried about them.
yeah, because they used to work on the basis of they would give us whatever they felt like it at the end of the year as a donation, I think. Last year we changed, or this year, I guess, anyways, we changed that and said, here's your annual fee.
Yep.
And this year I wasn't going to increase their fee because we're actually squeezing their space.
Right.
So that they're going to have to share and have a divider wall in between them, because
Yep.
we got somebody else that is a mission group.
That's great.
That wants the one room they all like 5 days a week to do tutoring.
That's great.
So
We
we're
should dig
shifting.
into some of the details, of all
Yep.
the groups and those kinds of things. And just so that you guys don't think I'm telling tales out of school, I literally had a meeting with the executive director of the guides and said, I'm sorry, but this can't continue. So I did a survey across Ontario,
Yeah.
and it's somewhere around 1,300 spaces that are being used for free, all in churches across Ontario.
Really?
So why are they crying poor then? I don't understand what the disconnect is between all the money they have and the local groups who say they don't have it.
Because their model was built on it being free. One can adjust one's model, right?
Yeah.
One can look at it and say, okay, that can't be free anymore, right? And I'm not denigrating their mission. I think their mission's awesome.
No.
I don't think it's more awesome than a sporting group who
Yeah.
would come in doing not-for-profit things.
Well,
And
they're-
so
they're paying $50 an hour.
precisely. Right. And so these are the things that we need to balance over time. So we can totally dig in and we can put a working group together and actually look at all your groups and look at how to tier them. And that can be a thing that you do over time because you want to be present and connected people. So for instance, when I arrived to Trinity St. Paul's and found that Viva Youth Singers had every room all day Monday and was paying nothing, I was like, I can't do that anymore. That's 44,000 square feet for $0, right? And so the plan was a 4-year plan. So it gave them plenty of time to figure out what they actually really needed, tier their rooms, make good decisions. And it was still a discount. They were still at rate 4. But nothing was not acceptable because you won't be here if they pay nothing.
With the guides and scouts, you say they need to change their model.
Yes.
Obviously, the local people aren't going to change the model of the larger organization.
That's why I went to the executive director and took a 2-hour meeting to discuss it.
And are they thinking about doing something different? Because if the local
Their
groups can't access the money. that's
their
not
answer
good.
to me was that being in churches is not a good plan for them anyways, if they want to diversify the kinds of
Right.
people who join. And I said, great,
Get out.
Yeah.
move along.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because there's other groups that will take that space in a heartbeat.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
fine.
And it was a really honest conversation. It's not like, I'm presenting it lightheartedly, but we had a really good conversation about business models, how we got to here, the way in which Canadian society has changed, the way in which the Girl Guides and the Scouts have changed, and the fact that it's actually just not a great match anymore, right?
They're not
So-
a religious organization.
Started with the whole sponsorship role. I mean, it started in churches with congregations.
Yeah, of course.
That
As
just
did
doesn't,
very many things. So did
Yeah.
hospitals. You're not running those anymore either.
Yeah.
So, we have to adjust over time to our changing landscape, right? So I think it would be great to have a look with you guys at your groups and to ask yourself, what's the core of what you want to do? How do we frame that? Do we want to do that in like a big way? Like here's the break point between one booking year and the next, and we're letting you know that we're choosing in this direction. Do you want to do it slowly? Do you want to just adjust amounts,
it's a good discussion because I have 3 letters that are ready to go out, and I think now I'll only send one of them. So the other 2 was the guiding and the scouting, and it was to tell them they were going to have to, instead of using what we call room 9 and 10, which has an accordion door in between, as one room, they were going to have to use it as 2 and move out of the other room.
Yeah.
And I told them we keep the price the same. Maybe I should increase the price at the same time.
There is no reason in an Oakville. So you say they're paying about $5 an hour?
It's under $5 an hour.
Okay. In an Oakville context, there is no reason that there should be anything under 15 or 20 an hour. There's just no reason at all. Right. So, and also then you also have to look at the way people break things up. So let's say that you have a group that doesn't pay very much and they take an hour at 7 p.m. That's messing up so many other things.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So that's the other thing is to say
Yeah.
to groups, it would be better and we'd be happier if you just do 4 hours, So let's say you have a dance group that does it at 1 hour. It'd be better if they just took 4 and just got it all done in 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Right.
Luckily enough, we don't have any of those. They're
Okay.
all in there for pretty well 3 to 4 hours.
It's the morning stuff that's briefer, isn't it?
Yeah, you go between 9 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, and the place is pretty empty. We
Yeah.
have some groups in there, but
So then
Only if-
one of the things you might want to think about is not being open during those hours.
well,
So sometimes I
It-
say to
it-
churches, maybe you're an evening
So-
community hub.
yeah. Let me give you another. We don't have someone there to open and close doors.
Right.
They get a key.
Okay.
And they give us $100 as a deposit for the key. So theoretically, we're not there to open and close. I'm one of the team, but we have a closing team at night that goes in and just makes sure the place is locked up
Okay. And that's all
We're just-
working okay?
yeah, fairly well. I mean, we're missing a
Great.
few people, but it seems to work because we have what I call ongoing, always present groups.
Yeah.
They notice they screw up, they're out. So they may leave a few lights on, but none of them seem to forget to lock the doors.
Great. So one of the things you may want to think about for the sake of your insurance and theirs is switching that from an actual key to a digital key. I'm assuming you're talking about an actual key.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that with a digital key is, as with old buildings, that's going to cost a few $1,000s, probably closer to 10 to set a system up like that.
Yeah, except the government has programs right now for security for churches. So
Yeah, well, the Ontario government, I'm not sure they redid it this year, but
I think
we
they did.
got cameras on that one,
Right.
you can tell us the name of the program. We can look into
oh,
it.
it's the hate program. It's the
Yeah.
anti-hate
The
program.
anti-hate, that's what it is.
I like that you just called it the hate program here.
Yeah,
So
Oh,
we
it's the
already-
program for hate.
Already applied for that one.
it's
yeah.
the anti-hate. So we applied for the
Okay.
camera, but I'm not sure that they brought it in again this year. I have to go check.
Okay.
There was nothing on it about it being extended. If it is, then I'll just make sure that it fits in their categories.
And if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But just the advantage I've seen over time with the digital ones
yeah.
is that you have the ability to set a time limit on it, right?
Yeah.
So for instance,
Yeah,
here
I
in
was-
Stratford, for our music things, we
Yeah.
have a key to Avondale. And when our time with them runs out, the key stops working. So I don't even need to return it to them. It just stops working and then I bring it back
Oh,
next
yeah,
year.
yeah, it's all
reprogram it.
computer out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've thought about it, but when we thought about the cameras, we even at the front door having putting in a lock that would allow the
I'm also curious, there's a new version, Harold, that my husband was just using that kind of freaked me out. He runs a whole bunch of venues here, and it was a wiser lock, like a digital lock on your front door, but he's locking it from an app in his phone. So let me talk to him.
Oh,
'cause
yeah.
I'm super confused about what's happening there, and it kind of freaks me out, but we'll figure it out. At any
yeah, I'll
rate,
go
so
back and take another look, see if they've got the program up and running again.
yeah. So these are just the things to think about. And then Saturdays, what's happening on Saturdays?
Not a lot. We got well, actually, that's a lie. We have our main renter is the Air Cadets,
Mhm.
who currently are in there Friday night, Saturday, and every other Sunday in the afternoon.
Great.
They're looking, although I think they're starting to get pushback from parents about it being the worst time in the week.
Right.
Because they're asking if they could shift to Monday and and only the occasional Saturday and Sunday. And I said, that's not likely to happen. Because I got renters in there that got sort of first dib that have been here longer than you.
Right.
Quite frankly, I don't want them to move into the week. I want them where they are.
Yes.
Right now, they're there Friday night. They're there for most of Saturday, and every second Sunday at 1 o'clock, they're in for 5 hours. So they're
Okay.
and then we have a little kickers that are in there on Saturday mornings for 3
Amazing.
hours.
What time does your Saturday operations end? What time is that finished?
Oh, usually, let's see, they're finished around 6 or 7.
Okay. A huge new thing, which I'm actually loving, is social dance clubs. So the younger generation, the group a couple of years, maybe a whole generation, maybe two
Yep.
below me, they don't drink anymore, like at all. And they're really looking for places to do social dance and board game groups and things like that. So those are things we could look at for outreach for you too, if you want to fill your Saturday night. And also they'll pay, and it's a lovely mission match just to give the 20-year-olds a place to be where no one's expecting them to buy anything. Once they've come in and paid their $10, they're good to go, right? So we're seeing a lot of like salsa dancing, swing dancing, alcohol-less raves, and board game cafes. So things to think about. Okay, and you guys came to me originally with specific questions. Deborah, do you want to revisit those, and maybe they can help us to frame the conversation tonight and figure out where we want to dig in and what we want to start tuning?
Yeah, so it's the partners that we are working with that would like to start using the space now, either now
Yeah.
or in the fall. And we are trying to make space for them. Our biggest question is how much we charge them.
Mhm.
The Indigenous organization has suggested that they get the space for free as part of our reconciliation work, and to get a grant that might help cover the space. Home of Dulce, I know is, they don't have a lot of money right now because they're very much a startup spiritual group. And they've been meeting online for a long time, so they haven't had to have people donate money towards this group. So they're kind of at square one. And Halton Black Voices and PFLAG, I have no idea what their financial reality is. But they are eager to have space and have support groups and tutoring and weekend events, proms, all these kinds of things.
So it's a tricky question, Deborah. So first of all, the need to do reconciliation work is real. But the reason that we started this reach out process for you was also to equalize and to provide sustainability, right? And so I think that a bit of honesty is required, in which you acknowledge that that is what you should be doing. However, the reality of your situation is that if you want to continue to be there at all, it's quite difficult for you to be handing out space for free right now, other than under specific circumstances, right? Like we talked about, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. This is not problematic, but I would be cautious about handing out free space unless, we're still sort of on the path, guys, about, are you going to remain where you are entirely? Are you going to sell part of it? Are you going to sell all of it and make a new vision, right? I don't know. I haven't been with you in a while. I don't know where you've gotten to in those conversations. Do you want to update me about that?
The last time we talked to Dave, it was, we're talking about staying put on the property and having a developer come and put housing on a portion of it and then redevelop the current space.
Okay. So the original severed piece. So is Dave pursuing that for you right now? And I'm sorry, I haven't seen him. He and I took opposite vacations because that's how it has to work. So I haven't seen him in a good month.
Interest that we are looking at.
Okay. Great. Good. So we'll see where that takes us, because that may change your future landscape somewhat. And perhaps that will allow you to provide for studied space for this mission-based work, right? But it's dangerous to start giving things away when you don't know the landscape of how much you're going to have, and we need to make you a really sustainable future plan, right?
Yeah, I mean, Deborah and I have talked a little bit about this. My concern is that sooner or later, partners have to pay their share. And if we start with zero and there's no, and I'm going to use the wrong words to be harsh, if there's no effort on their behalf to become a portion of a sustainable partnership, then I'm not sure we should start with them. So I mean, I agree, we have to be careful. I think the reason that Grandmother's Voice thinks everything should be free, quite frankly, is that they don't want to do the work to become an official body of something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a different equity-based approach and a different model, and not a hierarchical model in its nature. But in the end, it results in the same outcome, which is that it's hard for them to pay, right?
I doubt that they have much money. There are 2,500 Indigenous people in Oakville.
Yeah.
So it's not a large community. Halton has, it was 1% of Halton's population, but less than Oakville.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they get money from. Are they a charitable organization? So
they're not nonprofit right now, no.
They're not.
And I think it's an intentional ad hoc approach that is based on breaking models. And we can all agree that those are necessary things to happen in the world right now. And we encounter this a lot with our Indigenous partners. I think there's a couple things you could do here. One, I think you could be applying to the United Church of Canada under their Indigenous Ministries program to see if they will support it.
Right.
So if they will give you a grant to support Grandmother's Voices, awesome, right? Because 10% of every sale in the United Church of Canada right now goes to Indigenous ministry.
Yeah.
I don't know where that Indigenous ministry money is going right now, because I don't think there's 10% of Indigenous ministry happening in the United Church, and there's a lot of churches being sold. So I would be looking to that first.
Yeah.
And then secondarily, I would be looking to framing it really carefully. So saying, like, if you want daytime space, we can absolutely give you that. If you want to do one event a year, like your major fundraiser here, happy to give you that, right? It's open and ad hoc in nature that's problematic, I think.
Currently,
Thoughts,
what we've
Deborah?
asked for is our friendship room, and not as the people who solely have this room, meaning they would be a shared space and they'd have to reserve it just like everybody else, but they could leave their stuff there, could leave their drums there, leave their ceremony stuff there, make it kind of their own space.
Well, in many ways, that makes sense. And that what I would do is say that if it's between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., it's free. And then choose your lowest rate, not as low as the Girl Guides, for the period after that, right?
Right.
And it's easy, I say. You guys probably have people who are skilled enough to make a cabinet that locks, right? And so a big wood cabinet with locking doors can accomplish that. And Harold's shaking his head. No, you don't have those skills in your group?
We've been talking about purchasing one.
Okay, I can connect you to a group called Production Resources Toronto and a guy called Grant Hagee. And Grant has all the leftover film stuff that he sells for super cheap. And he has road boxes galore. And basically what I'm talking about is a road box. Just a big standing chest, and you open it up and it becomes shelves, and then you close it up and you roll it away.
They have to have a place where, in my mind, where they can lock their valuables into.
Yeah.
And not depend on us to protect them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We need to have a space for them that's safe.
You need a road case. I'm gonna go find your road case. So that part isn't hard. But I would start with United Church Canada and see about what's in Indigenous ministries right now, because you have a legitimate and real connection right now that you worked hard to create, and you want to value and give presence to that connection. At the same time, you want to remain a viable church, which you still are at this time.
Yes.
And so the United Church kind of needs to pony up for that.
Yes, and I've already put out a few emails though. And like when you talked about some of the arrangements where you'd kind of say, this is a 4-year thing where you'd start at one price and eventually that's how I kind of imagine the Home of Dulcie too, as they kind of get into their program and more established and more donations for them, for their own organization, that they could afford more.
But what if they don't? Like, don't we have to have some degree of certainty that?
But I guess that's what the
generate income,
like a 4-year plan would be. Like we would tell them what our expectation would be.
Yeah, so the 4-year plan is actually a lease. It's the same as how a lease says in year 1, you'll pay this amount, and in year 2, you'll pay that one, and in year 3, this one. So it's a lease. It's just a lease that starts at a significantly below market rate, right?
Right.
But I would like to do a session where we dig in, guys, and like really look at all your prices and see how they relate to market. And see, so the first thing I did in year 1 at Trinity St. Paul's is I just charged everybody 10% more, just everyone. And that was a lot of money. And then the sanctuary was still 30% below the cheapest of any recital hall in the area. So I went up again and again, and it still was way below everybody else. Right. So I wonder whether this is a case of boiling the frog or lobster, whichever you prefer, slowly, by just incrementalizing everyone, right?
Well, I'm taking the rates up in September by $5, which is in the $50 to 10%, except for the air cadets, because them I would I'm trying to bring everybody. For some reason there were other renters who had a lower rate than the air cadets, and that in my mind can't exist when they're of similar ilk, because the air cadets are $15,000 a year.
Exactly.
They're our biggest, so no one gets a better rate than them. So I'm bringing the volleyball people up, and they didn't blink much of an eye when I said, I'm going to raise your rates to $50 next year from 45. Are you coming back? And he said, oh yeah, and we'll take more space. And I thought,
Yeah.
should have been $60 an hour. So, and the church, the other church that's in there with us, they're going up $10 an hour if they want to come back on Sunday mornings.
Right. So
and
Harold,
they have-
maybe you want to send me some of your rate
Yep.
structures so I can have a sense of what you're charging for what and what the basis is and how
Yep.
those decisions are made. One of the other things in the long run, and I've said this before to all of you, I do worry about the sustainability of relying on yourselves to run this. So I think we want to just make sure we do some writing of policies and laying out of exactly what's what, so that if someone decided they'd had it and didn't want to do it anymore, someone else could step in and at least have the framework.
Yep.
You know,
Right.
and maybe that already exists too. As I said,
No.
you guys consistently surprise me. So,
it doesn't exist.
okay, cool. So let's do some policy writing, right? So I think these are the things that we need to do. So I'm gonna, because Natasha gets mad at me because I never tell her what I'm doing with people. I just keep doing things. So we're gonna look at your prices and we're gonna tighten your policies. And we're gonna look for where we can close the gap.
What
And-
policies?
Sorry, say again.
I'm saying what policies?
We have a terms and conditions for renters.
That's a start.
We have the rental agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I need you guys still have the document file folder, right? So I need you guys to upload anything you do have if it's not already there. So I can have a look at what you have. And then Dave is working on, so you've got
Can you send the connection to that document file folder again?
yeah, Natasha can, you're pretending that I know where it is, Harold. I don't know where anything is. I'm
No,
gonna
it's
get
just
Natasha
that
to send it.
if we had it anywhere in what we use to talk back and forth, it disappears every 90 days. So
Yeah, okay. That's annoying. Cool. So we'll do that. And then Dave has already done his request for expressions of interest. I think I saw it. It was actually
Yes.
really pretty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He does nice work.
Well,
that guy.
the front page was anyways.
Okay, cool. I'll have a look at that because I don't think I've looked. So when he comes back, which is next week, I can catch up with him about what's happening there. It sounds like you're okay right now with how things are working in terms of volunteerism and staffing. So that's cool. But keep in mind in the long run, you may want to adjust that model, but let's try to get it more sustainable first. Deborah, you're going to check in with UCC, and also you might want to check in with Toronto United Church Council, see what they have, right?
Okay. Yep.
And see if you can find a way to meet the needs, because you don't want to say no, you want to say we can do the following, right?
Right.
So let's see if we can find a way to say we can do the following.
Yeah.
What else, guys?
So we meet with all the partners on Sunday, kind of to bring them this suggestion about staying on the property and what that's going to look like. But I guess they would like to start using the space, and I think that's one of our biggest. I guess we need to talk to them one-on-one and establish what they can afford or what we're charging. That's the part I'm not quite sure about.
How much have you guys shared about where you're at financially
With who?
I don't think we have.
with your partners?
Oh,
Not with the partners.
With a congregation, 100%.
Yeah.
mhm.
Partners, no.
Why not?
Hasn't come up, really. I mean, we've talked about that. This is one of the ways that we hope to become more financially sustainable, but we haven't really drawn in the picture of what it looks like right now,
Why not bring them in?
right?
Good
Actually,
marriages are built on transparency, right?
yeah, and
I should have
we don't
muted
many-
that.
we
My
don't have
wife's
many
here.
years
Just a
of
second.
life, and we're very slim on volunteers and very slim on money. Like,
Yeah,
when
I
hear
mean-
all of this, I don't know how it all happens. It makes me nervous.
Sorry, say that again. What makes you nervous?
Just the whole of how this is going to work and make us financially sustainable. At this point, I see little pieces here and there. I don't know how it all comes together in the time frame we have to survive. So as I say, it worries me because I really don't, I've been away for a couple months, so I haven't been part of all the conversations, but I just don't see how it all comes together. You get a bit more rental income, but unless it's $100,000 a year more, and we're bringing in 60,000 now. So unless it's 100,000 more a year, we're not even breaking even. We're
Yeah,
still.
and it won't be, which is why from the very beginning, your land has always been a part of this question, and is why we have always assumed that that was a part of the pro forma of this, right? So in the beginning, we had suggested that you sell the whole thing. Then we revisited that when new partners came to light. You know, you're moving through your time of exploration. So Dave putting the REOIE is out, I think is a good step. But also, Judy, I want to say you're exactly on schedule in the sense that I could almost set a clock by the moment when you would panic. And this is it. You're exactly on schedule. Next, you'll start fighting with each other a little bit, and that's okay. And then we'll move through that too. I mean, it's like a family process, right? What you're doing is not easy. You've been given a large trust, and there are challenges to a large trust and to speaking your truth. So that's why I think in the name of speaking your truth, you should share with your partners where you're at. And I think what you should do is make that as succinct as possible. I think you should show them in a chart the gap in your income each year. And I think you should show them in a chart what it costs to operate your building. And I think you should show them in a chart how many of your volunteers have dropped off, and then show them a list of the user groups who are making use of your space right now. Because a true partnership is based on true transparency. We never said to them at any point, come and take all the things we have, we're giving them to you. That was never the framework. The framework was join us in a re-envisioning. Re-envisioning involves hard work. Now, the other way to do that, because sometimes it's hard to do it yourself, is if, Deborah, you were saying this is happening, the next meeting of this group is this Sunday?
Yep.
Right, because if it was a little further away, sometimes Dave and I do that for people. So kind of like a marriage counselor. So we say, hey, here is the cake that we have to not divide. How would you like to not divide it? And then we all get to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other part of that, the missing piece right now, is the assembly of housing, undoubtedly. And Dave and I kind of knew that when we joined you, that there was going to have to be a development. You knew that too, that there was going to have to be a development piece. You were already in the process of severing things when we met you. So,
yeah.
And we've seen the numbers on that, and those are good numbers if invested carefully. And if you don't do what certain congregations who remain unnamed do, where they pour it all into their building and make their place look absolutely perfect and hire 4 ministers and then wonder why they're dead 5 years later. So don't do that.
But that money that comes in from selling whatever we sell, by right, should simply be invested. And the fact is, we also need money to fix a lot of things in the building that are being held together with Scotch tape. Could only do that for so long too.
Yeah, your building condition report actually is one of the better ones I've seen. My memory is of it. You know, I was in a church the other day, Judy, where I walked in the front door and the front wall had a crack that went from the lower left corner to the upper right corner. And I thought, I'm not sure I should walk into this building. I don't know. You're nowhere near in that state. So Harold would know better than I would, but I don't think your repair deficit's that steep. Yeah.
It's a building which it's a building which isn't up to date.
Yeah.
So every time I look at it this way, every time you want to use it for something different, there's an investment required in order for it to be able to handle that most of the time.
Yep.
If you want to talk, I mean, our kitchen is absolutely, I won't say it's horrible, but it's ancient. And so, I mean, if people officially want to use our kitchen, I'm not sure it would pass a health inspection test.
No.
But is anybody asking to use the kitchen?
We've had a few people that do use it but they're using it as a base for caterers.
That's fine.
So we're okay with that. But if they want to start cooking, I mean, our agreement is we don't make any claims about the building. It's as is, you use it as is, and that's the way it is. But could we call it a kitchen that we could rent out as a kitchen? Probably not.
But then don't.
Is our communications capability around the church up to date? Nope. And we're doing things, but it's hard to do because it's block wall everywhere.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean by that, Harold?
Well,
Into the internet. pretty much.
internet or any communications from room to room. So if you're talking about computers and stuff like that, we're really not well set up for it. We went a route which I think is keeping us going, but it's probably not. If you had another couple of organizations in there wanting to have a heavy demand, I think we're in trouble. And it's hard sometimes to do it because one is we're not in a well-serviced 500-foot zone because no one ever serviced us with proper cable or anything because, oh, it's a church, it's not a residential. You know, the line stops there and it stops there and we're in the middle. If we want to get good service, we have to pay to have the lines put in to the building. If you want to set stuff up, it's all block wall. So you're going through, every time you want to go through something, you're going through block wall. It's not a hanging ceiling, so you don't even have the ceiling you could work with. So it's just an old building. It's hard to retrofit with some things. The gym floor is pretty much on its last legs. So there's a $50,000-$60,000 expense just to redo that thing.
Cool.
It's not.
I get it.
It's not deplorable, but it's.
I get it. So let's have a look at your user groups and start writing grants for them. So that's how everything at Trinity St. Paul's is paid for. You write a grant for the user group who has the ability to apply for it. They sign their name to it. You give them a new gym floor. Right?
So like a renter applies for the grant.
Yep. So OTF will always say no to you, but if you have enough renters who are using your gym and it's never used for religious purposes, then you get a letter from every one of those renters saying what their usage hours are. And as long as they're all not for profits, you get OTF to pay for the floor in your gym.
Yeah.
Similarly,
I think most of them are for profit. Volleyball, stuff like that. I actually thought about that because they have $150,000 sitting out there now in their capital campaign program, which kicks off in about a month and a half.
Exactly. So, but let's have a look at your list, right? You only need a certain number of users. Similarly, if a certain number of users are arts who are validated by the Canada Council, they can apply for Digital Now money. And the Digital Now money will pay for the jumper stations for your internet, right? So we just need to dig into who your people are and utilize them. A lot of what I did at Trinity St. Paul's was write grants in other people's names. And then they were happy because the building ran better and they didn't have to write them. And similarly, should the day come where you need to actually upgrade that kitchen, then we'll go to Horizons for Seniors. But I don't think there's a reason to upgrade the kitchen if no one wants to use it for that. Like kitchen upkeep is intense. So
yeah,
I would stay out of that if I were you. So
I'll add a list of renters to what I'm sending to you.
Exactly. And then let's set up a working group to dig in on this, to go through those list of renters and to see where the opportunities lie, both in terms of income and in terms of who might be able to apply for grants that we could talk to, right? So a true community hub isn't you running a space and other people using it. It's you collaborating with all kinds of groups to make your space work for them so that you're all there for the long run. So in order to do that, you have to start communicating with them about where you're at. And you're not asking them to fix it. you're asking them to be a part of the solution, right?
Right.
Do you think it's worth postponing the meeting, Deborah, from Sunday to when Kendra and Dave are available, just to be marriage counselors? Just a thought.
I think everybody is eager to hear more, so I almost wonder whether we keep this meeting and maybe schedule another one if to talk more about the relationship between the groups and
Is this week online or in person?
in person.
What are you hoping to come out of this week? Well, like, you don't want to string groups along on a premise that's not valid.
Last time we
They
gathered,
don't know anything about where we're at and the reality of our situation.
it was about trying to make a decision whether we stay on the property or move.
Right.
And we had said that we would gather again and basically come to a decision. And I think after talking with Dave, it's more about this is kind of our building right now and our responsibility. So we can actually come to the partners with the suggestion that this is what we're looking at and how we want to move forward. And kind of just ask them to be on board with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Deborah. So what I would do is frame it as, given, and this is where you start introducing it slowly, given our financial situation and our desire to continue to be a community hub for the region as we support yourselves and all of these following partners, we've made the decision to put out a request for expressions of interest for a portion of our land so that we can seek for redevelopment of that land. And I would be very upfront because people will immediately say below market housing. And I think you need to say that you wish to use the gift of the income from at market housing in order to energize and stabilize the hub for community good, and that both are valid paths.
Yeah.
So anytime we build any housing stock in Ontario right now, we help the situation because more housing stock is more housing stock, right? And in an ideal situation, we'll build some below market, and maybe when we get down to it for yours, they'll still be below market units. That's totally possible. But I would not let people ride on the assumption that you're going to build below market, because I can already tell you that the footprint's not big enough to build below market and have funds out of that. So let's not go that way.
Yeah, we've already explored that. We know that.
Cool. Awesome. So sorry for repeating things, guys. Dave and I have been crossing in the night. So I would say that to them and say, so based on that, we're looking into this housing part right now. We want you to know we've decided to stay where we are. We're looking into this housing. We're looking at our current operations model within our building, which has become quite busy, surprisingly, all of a sudden, sounds like, right? And that, Kendra and Dave are working on pro formas to bring you to long-term sustainability on both mission and money spectrum, right? And I would say to them too, that as a part of that, as you look towards building upgrades, it is a legitimate offering also from Grandmother's Voice, because they can do this because they're Indigenous, for them to look for grants to help to upgrade the building instead of paying rent. So for instance, if Grandmother's Voice says using the gym, it doesn't actually matter that they're not a not-for-profit. They're Indigenous. They don't have to be. They can run around that and apply for grants to help upgrade the building, right? And so it's actually easier for organizations who aren't religious to get capital funds.
Oh, yeah.
So let them do that, because it still
Yep.
reduces your operations because you're dealing with the capital, right?
Yep.
Does that make
I think
sense?
Halton Black Voices was one that talked about using the gym for special events. So they would be another
Either
one
one.
that would get grants.
Either one. So Halton Black Voices would actually, are they incorporated not-for-profit?
I believe they are, yes.
Okay, because they would actually have to be, it's only Indigenous that doesn't, because they're non-hierarchical structure. They don't have to be inside that box.
Yeah.
So I would just go at it like that and then let the conversation flow and say that, Dave and I and you guys are working on really understanding how your operational model has worked from here to here, how you can tweak it. how you can bring it to a sustainable place through a combination of a new development and operational day-to-day changes. And you want to invite everybody in, and that you hope at a future meeting to sort of share what's happening with the operations and be open and inclusive partners within that, if you want to go that far.
Mhm.
And if you're not ready to say that, then don't say that yet.
What do the partners think a partner means?
I mean, in Dave and I's description of it, we said we were inviting them in first into dreaming, but we were very clear in that meeting too, that that there was a financial aspect to this, right? And I've been clear in Zoom meetings as well. So,
Financial aspect from them.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I've pegged it that precisely, but
Well, no, I think when I listen to some of the conversations, it sounds as though we want a partnership. We're providing the space and doing all the development and the work and all the rest. You're suggesting ways that they could help us with that.
exactly. So
But it's
please
not
bring
just
your
us just
ability.
being partners where it's all us.
No, that
They
won't function.
really- No, it won't function.
And
I
we had
also,
talked about that wheel, that we're all going to be kind of a spoke on the wheel. Nobody's in the center.
But it's, what does that mean to be a spoke on the wheel? Does it mean you pay your percentage?
See,
of
that,
everything
that's,
that we
that's,
do?
yeah, we do need to
So, like,
talk
I
about
think that
what a
that's
formal
part.
partnership looks like.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think we've been there yet, guys.
Yeah.
And so this is where we're getting to that, right?
Mhm.
So, okay, so you can't bring operational money. Can you bring capital? Right? Okay, so you can't bring operational or capital money. Can you be the people who oversee the space when it needs oversight? Like, you start looking for alternate ways to get to where you're going. But at the same time, Judy, you're absolutely right. We're not getting there without the development. We never were going to,
No. Mhm.
right?
Yeah, like Home of Dulcie is, they are a volunteer organization. They stress volunteerism and the importance of it. So, I mean, maybe if they're going to get a lower rate to start off with, they're helping with some of these things.
Exactly.
opening, closing, things like that.
It's the co-op model, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the things we ended up saying to Viva Youth Singers too. We were like, okay, your 70 children can't keep throwing their garbage everywhere. It's their job to gather all the garbage up every night and put it all away out in the bin. And, these are good ways to build community as well.
So I'm still 3 weeks away from paying for it, but so we put in a new online system which tracks, which eventually have a front end on the web. So if people want to see if there's space available, they can find out fairly quickly. But it has standard rates, and it'll produce invoices. You put in the payments, it tracks. Should I send you, or you can tell me who to send it to? Because it would help someone if they were looking at this, they'll know exactly how busy the building is at certain times.
Yeah, no, you should send it to Natasha and I, and then we can have a look at that.
Yeah, so I need email address so I can send you the invite to be a
Yep.
reviewer.
Yep.
You can't make changes, but you can see what's in there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll connect to Natasha after so that we can have a look together at what's happening.
The system came out of England, believe it or not. It was called a churches and villages.
Yeah, interesting.
And I originally thought I looked at that and I went, churches and villages. That's about what we are.
Yeah.
And actually it's proven to be a pretty neat little piece of software for $450 a year. So
Cool. I look forward to checking it out. I'm always happy to try something new.
I'll turn you into a viewer, and it'll help you understand what our. I don't know if you can get. Has anybody tried to get reports out of it yet, or do you just get the view?
The view.
Just got the view,
Just the view,
but I didn't try to get reports either, so
but it's even viewing. It helps you understand
it helps
what's
you,
going
yeah.
on each day. And
But there's a little
look-
hiccup too, Harold, wasn't there? Like, when you go into the.
oh yeah,
calendar.
with I still have to. I've gone to them once, and they said, "Well, it seems to work." And I went,
Oh,
"Yeah,
Sunday.
as long as you go to the month
Yeah.
view first, then you can go to the week and the day. If you try to go straight to a day view, for some reason, Sundays don't show up."
No
Yeah,
Sundays.
So you have to hit month first, right?
That's a
Yeah.
little funny with churches and villages.
Yeah, it's
That's
as
what
if
you
that
think.
no one's renting it on Sunday. It's like, where'd Sunday go? So
Yep.
And just to let you know, we have a musical group, the Entrada Bras, and we don't give them a break for rehearsing.
Well, that's okay. Don't start then.
Yeah.
Just because I suggested something doesn't mean you have to do it. Like,
They pay the same regardless of what they're doing in there, so.
that's your call, right? Every system is built differently, but I do think that the more trackable it is, so it could be executed by anyone, the better. What I'm really against is churches where whoever's on the desk that day makes the decision, and then if the person who's calling doesn't get what they want, they call back until they get a person they want. I hate that.
Well, there's only 2 of us that can actually enter something into the system, so.
Right. I bet you one of them's a softie though.
No, she's new and she just comes and says, what's going on, Harold? They phone and they want this, can they have it? So I guess basically there's one person.
Right. So we need to adjust that over time here. So we're going to look at your pricing. We're going to tighten your policies or create policies as necessary. You're going to put those things in the upload folder. You've got the REOI out. You're going to talk to UCC and Tuck. And we're going to start working on a little truth telling with our partners and bring them into the tent.
Sounds good.
So so I'm putting you in a bit of a, so I guess your concept about the guides and scouts is that maybe they should have an increase this year as well?
Oh, yes. Unquestionably. And you don't want to be nasty church people. So, you don't necessarily want to kick them out. I can tell you right now, in my experience, that as soon as you raise their rate, they'll go to another church. That's fine. In a year,
Yeah.
that church will be calling me too. And I'll do this again and again and again.
We'll probably lose a church member as a result of it, but that's.
You got to look at all the things you value. I'm happy to send you, because this is such a problem. And so I ran the numbers after my survey, and I figured that in general, the guides are getting about $1 million of space for free from churches. So I'm super happy to send you the financial statements for the guides and scouts because it was really annoying me.
What do the guides do with all the money if the local groups can't have it?
They use it to pay their staff, which is great. Their staff are really well paid. I got no problem with their staff being well paid, but you could adjust that model a little bit so that you could pay for the spaces too, because functionally what you do requires space.
Right.
Yeah.
And if the model was built on a model that doesn't run in Canada anymore, now you have to catch up just the same as everybody else has to catch up, My arts organization got a 15% cut from the Ontario Arts Council today. So did every other arts organization from the Ontario Arts Council. What will I do? I will figure it out. So
If the guys decide to leave, in the grand scheme of things, is that the money that's going to break us?
Oh,
no,
no.
because there's no money. Right.
Oh, right.
They'd be doing you a favor. Mostly I find then I put that to way better use, right?
Oh, yeah. The air cadets or the volleyball people at $50 an hour are ready to step in a minute's notice.
Right. Yeah.
So, and you have to find the balancing act, right? The reason I intentionally hard-hearted and direct is so that you don't have to be. I'm actually not this hard-hearted in my life, but for you, I need to be, because you've been collaborative, collective, working with everybody, giving everything to everyone, which is how you got here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we're not pushing them out. We're just going to ask them to pay something which is still below market, but.
Yeah, but it's reasonable. And then if they go somewhere else, they can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And she's well aware of our financial situation.
Of course she is. That's why I wonder that she doesn't.
I said I am not selling half my house. But she didn't step up and say, well, maybe we can pay another $5 a month.
Do a bit more. Yeah, no.
Right. So this is it, right? You got to figure out what you want to do and where you want to do it. And of course, everyone's going to try to get their best deal. That's their jobs.
Yeah.
But you also have to do a little bit of that for yourself too, so that you can keep doing all the things that you value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Who are you going to charge? The guides or the AA?
The guides.
Yep. Interestingly, at Trinity St. Paul's in the end, the AA came and said, we actually want to pay too. And we were like, okay, how do you want to do that? And they were like, whatever we get each month, we'll give you. At the end of the year, we want to know how short we were of what you would have charged us. And I was like, all right. And they were never short. Ever. And but they felt really good about that, right? And I was never going to ask them for the money if they were short, but basically we started functioning as their bank. right?
Yeah.
And then eventually they'd come to us and say, we're opening a new unit. We need $50 as a deposit. Great. We actually have that money that we've been keeping for you for 10 years. You know?
Yeah,
So-
they have occasionally paid what they could. It's every now and then they pay something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
not asking them to. It was just interesting to similarly, our Indigenous partners, you'll be interested to know, Deborah, asked to not be given free space. And the reason was it implied a level of control over their outcomes that they were discontent with. So they asked to pay. And we were like, okay, fine. And so then we said, okay, here's what we're going to do with that money that is a reconciliation based thing. And they were like, okay.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
everybody's relationship with money has its own cultural elements, right?
Yeah.
And church people find it super hard to talk about. So that's what I'm here
It's
for.
true.
I'm finding it less hard to talk about.
We've
You'll
been
get
doing a
used to
pretty
it.
good job talking about
Eventually
it
we'll
the
just
past
be
while.
swilling beer, chatting about your deficits. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys go for tonight. I think it's a good list. And we'll connect with Natasha and try and get you going on what comes next.
Thank you, Kendra.
Alrighty.
Yeah, thanks,
Kendra.
guys. Have a good
All right,
week.
take care.
Bye.
You too.
Bye now.
See ya.